Okay, hi everyone. Welcome back to another live stream on both Instagram and on YouTube. So you can join in from wherever you would like, and it will also be saved afterwards on our YouTube channel and also on our Instagram. So today's topic that we're going to be going into, and we're going to be sticking to this topic. So anything that deviates from that topic, we've probably discussed in other live streams, but we're only going to be talking about this one because it's quite important. We've been getting a lot of questions, a lot of calls about Chinese language programs in China. And if you want to study a Chinese language program in China, what can you expect? How does it go? What is the visa process like? Is it possible to do that at the moment? And I have studied a Chinese language program before in China, so I'm going to go over what you can expect and some of the most important parts that a lot of students are asking us about. So let me pull up the list right here. Okay, number one thing, visa requirements. So if you want to go and study in China, you are going to need a study visa. And a lot of people get quite confused about the visa process. Keep in mind, we're not a visa agency, so we can't help you with the visa process. But in general, how it works is that you need to either get an X1 or an X2 visa in order to study in China. You apply to the program you wish to apply to. Once you've been accepted, the university will mail you the physical documents that you need to apply for the visa at your Chinese embassy. It doesn't take very long to get the visa and it's quite affordable. So it's not really something to worry too much about, but do remember that you should probably apply well in advance and apply for your visa also in advance. Okay, then language proficiency level. So a lot of people ask about the Chinese language programs, and they would like to know if they can, or sometimes they might misunderstand the question, or they must understand the course, and they think that they can go from no proficiency in Chinese or a zero to advanced HSK 6 within one course, one semester or 2 semesters. Unfortunately, that's not the case. If you have studied another language before, you will know that there are certain languages that take a lot longer to learn than other languages. Chinese is one of them, and that's because there is no alphabet. You have to memorize characters. There are 4 different tones, and a lot of words sound very similar and have a similar way of pronouncing it, but due to the tone difference and the character difference, it means a different word. So it takes a long time to actually learn Chinese. So from someone who has learned from zero to HSK 6, and has done a degree in it and also done Chinese language programs, it's going to take you 4 years of very intense studying in order to get from zero to HSK 6. So that is about the equivalent of getting a bachelor's degree. So even if you were to do Chinese language programs, you would have to study for about 4 years very, very, very intensively in order to reach that proficiency level. So just keep that in mind that you can't just jump from an HSK 1 to 6 very quickly. And also keep in mind that each HSK level, which is the proficiency test you need to take, is twice as difficult as the one before. So it might not take you a long time to go from HSK 1 to HSK 2, but it's going to take you a lot longer to get to HSK 3, and it's going to take double that to get to HSK 4, and then double that to get to HSK 5, and double that to get to HSK 6. I got to HSK 5 within 2 years of very intensive study, and then it took me another 2 years in order to study for the HSK 6. So it's a lot more difficult than the previous test. So keep that in mind when you're applying. A lot of people want to study a program, a bachelor's program in Chinese, and they think they can study for 1 year and be able to reach that level in order to study a bachelor's in Chinese. It's very, very difficult to be able to do that. So manage your expectations. Don't set yourself up to fail, and go in there with an open mind. And then the program options. There are so many different program options for people who want to do a Chinese language program. And many of these Chinese language programs don't really have a very strict age requirement. So you can apply to many different programs and not really have to worry like many of the other degree programs which have a strict age limit. There are programs that start in the March intake, and then also programs that start in the September intake. You can do a 1 semester program, you can do a 1 year program, or you can even do a summer course or a winter course instead. So there's so many different options to choose from. Keep in mind that we get a lot of questions about where should I study in China? China is such a huge country, or they have quite a bit of a prejudice to go to a specific area. They only want to go to the north and they don't want to consider other options. As someone who has studied in the South, there are so many wonderful options for studying Chinese in China. I studied in Shenzhen University, which is in Shenzhen, which is right next to Hong Kong. So, very much as south as you can get. And I had a wonderful experience. And the one thing that people often are very worried about is that the quality of the Chinese they're going to be learning is not going to be as good as what they would get if they were to study in Beijing. Now, while people have very good reasons to study in Beijing, the textbooks that you get and the teachers that you get are very much governed by the Confucius Institute, and they have to pass very strict tests in order to be able to be allowed to teach. A lot of the teachers that I had were actually from the north, and they came from places like Beijing, Tianjin, they even came from Wuhan. So we had like so many different teachers from all over the country. We didn't just have teachers from the south of China. Also, the teachers that I had that were from the south of China had a very, very good accent and even studied in the north as well. Now, a lot of people ask, well, you're going to be hearing people speak Cantonese all the time. That's not necessarily true, as if you're going to be studying in major cities, and many of you will be studying in major cities, as these are the easiest programs to apply for and the easiest places to get to, and have a much bigger expat community as well. So it will be able to welcome you much easier. You have a lot of people that have migrated, Chinese people that have migrated from other parts of China to work in that city. So, for example, Shenzhen, even though it's in the province that speaks a lot of Cantonese, province of Canton previously, um, we had a lot of people that came from the north and came from all over China. And I actually very rarely met someone that actually came from Shenzhen, like that was born in Shenzhen and always lived in Shenzhen. They'd always come from other places. So very often people don't really speak Cantonese all the time. You're mostly going to be hearing Mandarin Chinese, and especially in buildings like schools and banks, everyone has to speak Mandarin Chinese because it's the only way that everyone's going to understand each other. So, also, your textbooks are regulated by the Confucius Institute, which is based in Beijing. So, don't worry too much about that. I would say focus on why you want to go to a specific city. Is there a cultural aspect to it? Do you want to be close to certain places, like for traveling reasons, or certain cities for traveling reasons? Because you're going to be doing quite a bit of that since China is so big. For me, one of the biggest reasons was that I really hate the cold and I didn't want to live in a very cold place. So I moved to the tropical area where we don't really have a winter, and that worked out well for me. Okay, and then your study environment. So your study environment, it is very much up to how you decide to study. A Chinese language program is not as intensive as doing a degree program. However, if you decide that you're going to take it very seriously and do all your homework regularly and always show up to class and ask the teacher questions and pay attention, you're going to be receiving a very it could also be quite difficult. So it can be intensive, but it is very much what you make it. And for the most part, many of the programs, especially at public universities, it's very similar to other Chinese language programs. So usually you're going to be having classes in the morning from 9 until 12 from 9 until 12. And then after that, you can then choose to do certain extracurriculars, like, for example, joining in some HSK classes, training classes. Or if you want to do some more cultural aspects, my university offered tea ceremonies, poetry recitals, even learning Cantonese if you wanted to. So also like things like Chinese painting, paper cutting. So that is also a great way to really immerse yourself into the culture and learn quite a few extra skills and make some new friends. And also some people say, well, 3 hours a day might not be enough. trust me, it's very intensive. So you're going to be quite tired after that, and you're definitely going to get homework. This also gives you the chance then to also be able to explore around your city. And if you would like to do some fun things with friends, you're able to do that. So it's very nice because it definitely allows a bit more of a study life balance. And I do recommend it, especially for people that are doing something like gap years or not quite sure what they want to do yet. I do think it's a great way of starting. Okay, now let's take a look at the cost of living. So obviously, being a student, you get a lot of perks. So it does depend on which city you decide to go to. The biggest cities, we have the major four cities, which is Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Shenzhen. They're very expensive to live in. That doesn't mean that they'll break the bank, or that they are the equivalent of living in another high cost city, like for example, New York. So people with a higher exchange rate, they might find it extremely cheap to live there, but you can live for much cheaper in the cities around those places, or in some smaller cities. The cost of living is definitely lower. So keep that in mind when applying. You're As a student, you get certain privileges, like, for example, you're able to eat at the canteen. The canteen offers a lot of very delicious, healthy food that's extremely, extremely cheap. You could load up your entire plate and pay about 10 RMB, which, if you convert that into your local currency, you'll be able to see what that is. And you also get other privileges, like being able to use the gym on the school campus for free, having very large discounts on haircuts at the university as well, discounts at the supermarkets, being able to get discounts on anything in the city as long as you can show your student card. Definitely lowers the cost of living. You also get quite a cheap health insurance that's provided by the school, but you do have to pay for it in the beginning of the semester, and it covers many things. So definitely there's a lot that goes into that. So you can have quite a low cost of living as a student there. The one thing I do want to iterate about accommodation is that accommodation for Chinese language students might not be so easy to sort out. So, for most of the public universities, which is the majority of the universities, the priority for accommodation on campus, or the dorm rooms, goes to degree students for obvious reasons. So, not all of them will actually be able to have rooms available for Chinese language students. So, that means that you will have to find accommodation. You can ask the teachers, because they usually do have a list of resources that they can give you to find accommodation nearby the campus. So, it's not too difficult to do so. Um, okay, and then for cultural adaptation. So, obviously, going to China can be quite a culture shock for many people from around the world, but it is important to try to adapt to this different culture and to adapt to the social environment. So, you should definitely be prepared to learn about Chinese customs, etiquette, their social norms, and this can help you to ensure a smooth cultural adaptation and introduction to the locals. And try to also remember that as a foreigner there, you should try to be very respectful of how you um, behave in a different country, and don't expect everyone to be able to cater to you, because unfortunately, as a foreigner, you will have to adapt to the other culture. So don't expect everyone to know English, don't expect everyone to act a certain way, and don't assume that something is rude just because it's different from your own culture. Then health and safety. So it is obviously very important to have health insurance whenever you are going outside of your country. So universities do offer a health insurance, a student health insurance, and this is usually a must. You have to do this. It's quite cheap. You have to pay for it in the beginning of every semester, and it covers your medical expenses while you're studying there, while you're a student there. So if anything were to happen, you would be able to use your medical insurance. So this is very important, and you can't actually enroll in the university without having this medical insurance, which I think is a very good thing. When you are on your way to travel to China, I would recommend getting a short term travel insurance just until you have your medical insurance at the university. Also, just be aware of the safety precautions and follow the local laws and regulations. And make This is something that I do want to iterate, that when you're in China, certain things are illegal, even if they might be legal in your own country. Do not try to break the law. It's very difficult, if you break the law, to try, and you will most likely get deported, and get banned from your studies, and also get banned from the country. So don't try to do anything illegal, even if you think it's not a very big thing and it is legal in your own country. Please follow the local laws. Okay, and then also preparing for HSK exams. So if you don't already know, HSK, which stands for 韩语水平考试, which is the proficiency test, the biggest proficiency test for showing your proficiency in Chinese. It used to be from HSK 1 to 6. Now they go all the way up to 9 with the new version. And this is something that is not included in your Chinese language program. It is a separate test that you have to enroll in and pass in order to have the test. So you will get a certificate at the end of your Chinese language program showing that you did take a class here, and what subjects you took and everything, and have your transcript. But if you want to enroll in an HSK test, you will have to do so. You can check usually on campus. You can ask some of the teachers. They usually do have tests available on each university campus once a month or once every 2 months that you can enroll in. I do recommend getting this, as it's a much easier way to show what your Chinese language level is internationally once you decide to leave China or find a job later on. So those are the questions. Those are the biggest questions we have when it comes to Chinese language learning programs. So um, thank you guys so much for joining. I'm sorry we're not going to go into anything that's off topic. So thank you so much for joining, and I'll see you guys next week for the next live stream.